But fellas, one last topic because we gonna mention colorful. Because I got on the orange glasses right here. Colorful. We're gonna make it real colorful. And for anyone who's interested in these glasses, 9.5 glasses, go get yourself a pair of them 9.5 glasses. They got a big sale out right now, so go check them out. Favorite Jim Cornette moment.
Yeah.
I will give a shout out to two people. My brother Kenny, he introduced me to Jim Cornette, and I will give shout out to Undisputed World Champ because of the story that I'm about to reveal on one of my favorite Jim Cornette moments is when Jim Cornette got on Ed Ferrara. Remember when Ed Ferrara was making fun of Jim Ross because of Jim Ross's, of course, Bell's palsy?
Mm-hmm.
I cannot show you the clip or the language. I can't tell you what Jim Cornette said. You just got to go watch it on YouTube on your own time and see it for yourself. But Jim Cornette, just like these glasses, colorful. And the thing I love about Jim Cornette, man, he's outspoken, he's unapologetic, he says whatever is on his mind, and he's also a good dude too. Mick Foley is one. Remember when Mick Foley held out after the Montreal screw job? Jim Cornette convinced Mick Foley to come back because at the end of the day, look, Mick, I understand you're upset with how the way Vince screwed Brett, but at the same time, Vince McMahon is going to be set for life. Shawn Michaels, he's making almost $1 million and he's going to be the champion. Bret Hart is going from a million and a half to $2.5 million to go to a different company. But is Bret Hart going to send you a check for you being proper? And he's like, no. So I love that about Jim Cornette. He's funny, he's energetic, he's unapologetic. And the other moment with Jim Cornette, him and Vince Russo. My God. I mean, water and oil. That's the epitome of Jim Cornette and Vince Russo. Water and oil. Especially what Jim Cornette would want to do to Vince Russo. I can't tell you that as well because I don't want to get punished. But Jim Cornette, man, he is one interesting, funny, unique dude. And I give shout outs to my brother Kenny and also Undisputed World Champ. Jim Cornette, he is hysterical or colorful. So, Champ, I'm going to let you go. What is your favorite Jim Cornette moment?
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. You know, I number one, I'm just gonna tell on myself. I like Jim Cornette because I'm kind of immature a little bit because he kind of reminds you of that uncle you go to his house just to hear his language. So you go to his house just to hear his language. So I had an uncle like that. God rest his soul. I used to go over his house every other weekend just to hear his language, and and that's why I got the term colorful from
Colorful.
because of him. God rest his soul. But I will say this: one thing that I regret, it's regrettably so, is the thing is, it's crazy how his colorfulness it's crazy how the colorfulness is like mistaken. It so much it overshadows his knowledge. I mean, people remember the colorfulness over the knowledge. And that's unfortunate because he's one of the greatest minds in wrestling at this point.
Him and
Probably one
Jim
of the great.
Ross.
Yes.
They,
And if you really want me to be honest, if he wasn't as anti-establishment as he would be sort of like Paul Heyman is. But he's just a little bit too anti-establishment. I don't think the wrestling industry, especially the corporate wrestling, can handle it. Because if you think about the careers he helped build in Ohio Valley Wrestling, think about the whole he. If you really want me to be honest, Jim Cornette in Ohio Valley Wrestling is personally responsible for the entire Ruthless Aggression era. Think about who came out: Randy Orton, Batista, John Cena, Shelton Benjamin,
Benjamin.
Danny Basham, the Basham brothers. Retrained a bit. I mean, went down there to brush up the Big Show. A lot of guys was in Ohio Valley Wrestling. He was personally responsible for those crop of guys going up and being the next generation. So big ups to Jim Cornette. But one of my favorite moments, man, has to be I think it was back in the early 90s when the Junkyard Dog first came back to WCW. And he was talking to him about the Midnight Express. And he said, my guys have been winning titles. My guys have been doing this. My guys have been doing that, winning titles. Where have you been? And he said an address, a particular address. And the only thing you saw is Jim Cornette's face and just light up. He's like, that's my mother's address that you've been in. So, that was a pretty funny one. The other one has to be the one that you sent me the other day because I had forgotten about this one. Jim Cornette, when he whacked that dude with that tennis racket like he did, and it made the paper. Whew. And look, Jim Cornette is not a small dude. That dude like 6'2", 6'3", so watch your step. And the last one I will say this, man, when he managed Owen Hart, the British Bulldog, and Yokozuna. I think that was, like I said, I think that his management skills were kind of underrated. He did manage Owen Hart. He did manage Yokozuna, Vader, the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, he's responsible for a lot of careers. I mean, the thing that Jim Cornette, people give him a lot of flack, but I will say this. We would hate it as well if people got on podcasts and didn't do anything but do everything other than podcasts or do everything other than sports. And that's his argument. I want to see wrestling when I go see wrestling shows. Now, granted, some people can look at that and say, hey, you have to realize that times have changed. But, with wrestling is the only thing that is constant. And, I think that is his right with the wrestling industry at this point. And do I agree with him a lot of times? Sometimes, but I will say this: he's passion and his grit helped build a lot of careers. Like I said, he was personally responsible for Ohio Valley Wrestling when he was the booker, and he built a lot of careers. I mean, like I said, Ohio Valley Wrestling was personally responsible for the Ruthless Aggression era, and Jim Cornette was the catalyst of that. So, Mr.
And let's not forget Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yeah, that.
Hey.
Only one thing comes to mind, and I will say that when we get off the air. But rest in peace to him, though. Rest in peace to New Jack, though.
BRF. Oh boy, yeah, you ain't joking about that one. R.I.P. New Jack, most definitely. We'll say it. Yeah, that's definitely an off the camera topic. But honestly though, people just don't understand just how knowledgeable Jim Cornette is. I mean, take all the language aside. When you really hear him talk about the business, you just like he's like an encyclopedia when it comes to the business. He knows so much, and anytime he gets to talk about Vince Russo, you just like you just step out the way and let that man handle business because I'm telling you, man, talking about Vince Russo is just a show in its own right. So remember
them rap videos I was showing you before we did the show.
Like I said, I caught the back end of that one you showed, and I was crying. I didn't even see the whole video. It was that funny. But honestly though, even his like his own era, like his TV persona, like I feel like a really, really underrated run was when he was the TNA run when he was when he was like the head of like I guess like the TV kayfabe kind of like head of creative or whatever with TNA. I think that was like an underrated run for him because I mean he was like he made a lot of really good matches and he opened up a lot of opportunities for for those who wouldn't get shots in other companies. So he was vital in like that. I think it was like 05, 06 that TNA run, where TNA was kind of first trying to really establish itself as competition for WWE. And honestly, I feel like they would have had they had the right mindset and people in place at the top. I feel like TNA would have been a much bigger entity than what they are right now. So his TNA run was definitely an underrated run. But honestly, though, like I said, just hearing him talk, whether it's like Dark Side of the Ring or like any other thing like that, just hearing him talk unedited, uncut is like, I don't want to say music to my ears, but it's like some of the funniest stuff you will ever hear. So yeah, just any Vince Russo anything is just like it's like the funniest stuff ever.
Shout out to our guy Grant. Salute to the pod tonight. Mike Tyson is about to put Jake Paul on the canvas on round 1, please. If Jake Paul knocks Tyson out, I'm going into hiding for a month. No lie. But hey, man, the reason why he gets on Vince Russo so much, I don't agree with what he would want to do to Vince Russo. But the thing is, with Jim Cornette, he takes the wrestling business seriously. He eats, breathes, and sleeps wrestling. And with Vince Russo, the reason why I get critical of Vince Russo from time to time is because he treated it as if it was a 9-to-5 job. Jim Cornette, that this is his life, this is his passion, this is his hobby. He did not, and shout out to our guy Luis. Luis knows tunes. He's a wrestler himself, die-hard wrestling fan. You know, Vince Russo didn't really take wrestling business as seriously. He just thought that, you know what, wrestling is fake. And Jim Cornette, he explained it on Dark Side of the Ring when they were doing the episode on, I think it was the Brawl for All. It could be huh?
Oh my God, the Brawl for
Yeah,
All.
the Brawl for All. Remember, Jim Cornette said it best. It could be choreographed, it could be predetermined, it could even be manipulated, but there's nothing fake about people breaking their bodies. And the way he went after Vince Russo on the Brawl for All. Lord.
Ooh.
But Ed Ferrara, after what Ed Ferrara did to Jim Ross, and then the way he spit, I don't blame him either.
I don't blame him, because that's just like somebody saying something to me about one of y'all. That's like, bro, don't do that. That's grounds to get floored. Don't do that, especially when you're talking about someone Bell's palsy. That's not a joke, and that's not nothing to play with. You know, don't. Like I said, man, treat people with the respect that you would want your darn self. If you was in a situation, you wouldn't want nobody making fun of your mama or your dad or yourself if you had Bell's palsy. And you know, Jim
Ross, one of the most likable people in the business.
Jim Ross that wasn't his first episode with Bell's palsy. Remember, he had another one back in the mid '90s, and he actually got fired for that.
Right.
You know, remember, he got fired one of those episodes he had with Bell's palsy. So yeah, that's nothing to play with. You make fun of my friend, hey, you got to see me. And yeah, if I do something crazy, I'm not responsible for my actions. If you made fun of one of my friends or family because you're making fun of an illness that they got, that's an illness. That's nothing they can control.
Yeah. But that's what I love about Jim Cornette too. I mean, even though he says a lot of crazy stuff, he will support people in need. I mean, like I brought up the Mick Foley example. You have to be a certain individual to really upset Mick Foley, champ. You really do, because like, remember Off the Record when Hulk Hogan was on Off the Record and how he disrespected Mick Foley, and for Mick Foley to come back with that type of response.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be a certain individual in order to upset a guy like Mick Foley. Because just like Jim Ross, Mick Foley is a great guy, likable guy. And you do that to him? But Jim Cornette, man, I mean, he's hysterical. He's unapologetic. He is comical. But I don't agree with him with rap music. He doesn't like rap music. That's the only thing Jim Cornette and I don't agree with. But other than that, we agree upon everything. But if you go on YouTube and Jim Cornette rap music, especially how the way he talks about Vince Russo and Dave Meltzer,
nasty,
colorful. just like these glasses, colorful. That's all I'm gonna leave it at that.